got to know each other and ultimately work together is that when you told me to, bugger off, you're raising that $1 million kind of angel round, like I didn't actually bugger off. We still actually maintained contact and got to know each other organically over time. So whether it be times I'm up in the Bay Area or you're down in SoCal, I think it's probably I'm up to the Bay Area more often, or coincidentally up in the Bay Area to grab breakfast. We just got to know each other. We talked the business, and part of it was one, like you getting to know me, but also me getting to know you, quiz you around sort of like, what is it that Derek wants to build? Does he actually have the same vision around what the future of community and the future of leveraging events to bring people together in real life to create movements? Is that something that we see eye to eye on? And that's what ultimately got me to the point where I was just so excited about if I was given the permission to invest in the Series A to do so, because it wasn't like a transactional in terms of the way in which we put together that Series A. It was just an organic relationship that culminated in that deal happening. So I'm curious, like, was it the same on your end, where you're just like, yeah, I have this meeting with Kobie, I'm going to be on my phone most of the time, and then like I just need the money in the Series A, and you took my dollars. Like maybe I'm romancing that experience way too much, and you really didn't care about all those breakfasts that we had. So I'm curious, on your end, how did it feel?
Yeah, I mean, look, like when you raise money from people, you're gonna have to. These are been reading this book about Amazon's business, and they talk about one-way doors and two-way doors. And two-way doors are where you can walk and back out of something, like their phone that they built. Like they could just kill the project and then like back out of the phone business. But like when you acquire a company, for instance, like you can't walk out of that acquisition, right? When you sign up in it, like it's a one-way door, you walk through and you have to live with that. And when you get an investor, like it is as one way a door as there is. Like you're gonna be with that person and that firm and everything, the good and bad that comes along with that for the next, if you're lucky, 5 to 10 years, right? I mean, maybe look at Stripe. I mean, they're still not public. Like they've been around for, I mean, that company, I can't even remember exactly what it's called. It's like Oyo or Olo or something, but it's like this food, like a CRM that like, for like restaurants and stuff. I mean, they've been around since like 2005. They're going public right now. I mean, it's 16 years, right? So like you got to make sure that you're on the journey, on the ride with somebody that you want to spend time with, that's genuinely going to do what they say they're going to do. And, it's hard to build that kind of trust in a matter of weeks. And so I think that was the nice thing about from when we raised in July to going into the next year, we had about 9 to 12 months where we had interactions. We wanted people that were going to be engaged with us. You stayed engaged, which sent good signals to me that like you were somebody that cared about it and cared about us. You were genuinely helpful on, on different things. We had good conversations. Like all of that stuff led me to believe like, hey, this is somebody that if I have to talk to this person once a week for the next 5 or 6 or 10 years, this is somebody I'm actually going to enjoy working with and learn from. And so I think that was a really nice way to like, and some of our other investors, like I've known for much longer than we had talked or met. So it was a way to build a relationship in what I would say is kind of a quick cycle to do that in under a year. But like a lot of people do it much shorter than that, but it's very risky.
Yeah, no, some people do it in like a week. I'm finding out these days. I'm curious also, like, the road to where have you gotten now? It wasn't always been up and to the right. Like, what did you hear from naysayers early on, or maybe up until now? And like, how do you push through that negativity? Because not everyone's going to think that what you're working on is important or really care about it. So I'm just curious, like, how was that dealing with any sort of negative feedback, and what did you do to push through it?
I don't know. I take things very personally. Honestly, like it's not something I'm really great at, of just letting stuff roll off my back. Especially investors. I mean, one of the things I'm most proud about the latest round that we did, was a very, very small percentage of that round, a very small chunk of money was from an investor who passed on the seed round. And in kind of, his email was, I knew him, and many of the other people felt I think the desperation in that first email that I sent, but he didn't even get on the phone with me. He just said, you should keep bootstrapping. And I was really like hurt by the lack of, I was like, this is my friend. And I'm so desperate, but now he's investing now 4 years later at we're like 13x or something, the value or, of what the original, or that's where the number is with the dilution and everything. So it's like, to have him come in and do that and to say, now I'm ready. Now I get it. Like, I'm very, very proud of that. I'm also very proud that Atlassian's been a customer for 5 years. It's one of our first customers. So look, I've had lots of investors say no. About many of them. You've felt my pain on that because you've had to listen to me, vent about it. It only takes one. I call it the Shervin effect. Like, you only have to do one great deal to be like legendary, right? And Shervin Pishvar, who I don't know at all, but he did the Uber Series A. Like, he's a legend because of that one deal. And then it fell into all these other things, and so you only need to get one investor to say yes. And many of the no's have led to the yeses. And so, whether it's in almost every round, because somebody said no one time, they were more inclined to say yes the next time.
Yeah.
Started watching it. Have you seen that? Have you seen the no's leading to yeses with other people, or is that something unique to me, or how have you seen that?
Again, part of it is this: you're seeing these trend lines. So it's having these additional data points where, depending, sometimes there might be a hard no where I never want to say a company ever again. But sometimes it's a no because of there's not enough traction. And you just want to see more evidence that this founder is really seeing great product market fit. But there's never usually a no where there's an allergic reaction between founder and investor, and suddenly they wake up one day like, hey, I want to invest in this person. That's never usually the case. But yeah, many times there are cases where people, if there are multi-stage firms where someone may have missed it on the early stage side, but then there's just undeniably a winner there where you try to get in later, and hopefully you don't get rejected because, like you said, founders remember. People remember when they got that no, and maybe someone didn't even say no, they just didn't email back, they just ghosted them, and then you're going to want to find a way to get either a lead or get a material allocation in the growth round, and maybe they'll get it and maybe they won't, but that definitely does happen for these multi-stage firms many times.
What about an entrepreneur flip the other side where maybe I raised that round in the summer, maybe I don't, and I want to stay up to date with you. I saw a tweet this morning that was I need to opt in for an investor update if I'm not an investor. Do you if I'm the entrepreneur, should I be sending you what's the cadence for keeping myself top of mind with you or showing you my progress? Is that something once a quarter? Is it small little updates every month or so? Is it more formal things? What's the best way for me to keep your interest as we're growing?
To really keep an investor's interest, it needs to feel like it's definitely more like a one-to-one. So these mass emails that you get sent out as an investor, you're oh yeah, I'm one of probably 50 other investors on this list. So I'm just getting the general update email. Maybe I'll read it, maybe I won't, but you don't feel special. Where it really becomes a relationship is treat that person as a relationship, like potentially a friend, and communicate to them like a human being. So send a direct note, hey, I enjoyed interactions. You just want to, catch up. I'd love to share an update about the business, pick your brain on stuff. And if you really had a true great interaction during that round where potentially the investor passed, they may still want to talk to you and get to understand how your business is performing, maybe offer advice with regards to what you could be doing to actually get to that next pivotal milestone. And then maybe you as that founder can reciprocate value by introducing them to other interesting founders that are in your ecosystem. So it doesn't feel, again, like transaction. You're developing a nice organic relationship. The way I look at managing these relationships as an investor, I look at them as like these people as friends. Like I may not invest. Honestly, I have, I don't know how many meetings I've given you, thousands of meetings. And most of them are just like first meetings. But there are first meetings where I truly do have a great interaction with the founder where it's like, oh, this is not like to be an investment, but like this also be a friend. I actually want to spend time with this person. And those, whether it turns into investment or not, who the hell knows? But like my time, I feel like when I spend with that person later, it's not wasted. Like it's not any waste my time hopping on for a half hour, getting to know the update about their business, giving them advice, them giving me potentially advice, and learning about a category that maybe is new to me. And if it turns into an investment, great. If it doesn't, like who knows? Maybe like someone I know should work at that company. Maybe it's a good acquisition down the line for my other portfolio companies. Or maybe it's just a great dinner I have in San Francisco and I happen to be around and I want to actually just catch up with this person. So that's how I look at these relationships with founders. Like I treat them as friendships. And when you actually do have the privilege of investing in that founder and you are friends together, oh my God, it's amazing. It's like the best situation ever.
Jason Krause in the comments said investors are people too. So
yeah, exactly. we are human beings, and that's also true. Like sometimes, like even if like the company could be like the hottest company ever, the way I operate is like I have like a zero asshole policy. If like, oh, this company is worth like tens of billions of dollars, so I'm gonna hate my life actually like spending time in every board meeting with you. Like no, like life's too short. I'd rather do something else with my time. And I feel like sometimes founders don't realize that. They just want to go in for the jugular and be like, you're gonna give me money because we're gonna make a lot of money together, and like that's about it. It's like no, like okay. Slow down. Like, where are you from? Tell me about yourself. I'll do the same. Let's just like get to know each other a little bit, because if we work together, we'll be spending a lot of time together, and there's no way of reversing this unless like you go out of business or I sell my stake or we make like a gajillion dollars. So that's kind of the way it's all works. But maybe transition a little bit into, I guess, the topic of raising $55 million in 1 year. So talk about that first $15 million, which you raised about a year ago this time, and what happened like right after, which we clearly all know.
Well, we finished our fiscal year on the last day of January, and we really were driving towards very specific goals to sort of 3x growth from the year before, and get a bunch of things in place from a go-to-market situation, and we hit those goals, thankfully. And then we as in January, about mid-January, it looked like we were going to hit those goals. So I sort of preemptively started talking to a few people. And then literally right at the week of Startup Grind Global, we finished the event. And the next day, after the event was over, my co-founders and I were up and down Silicon Valley pitching people. We got a great offer from Accel, which we accepted. And we closed the financing the first week of March. And then for this great in-person community building events business, and then COVID hit. And I never have heard a negative word from Accel about any of it. I did at least on one occasion apologize to them for things that were totally out of my control, saying, hey, like I promise this will be a good business at some point. Definitely did not look like a great investment at the time for the next, like, let's say 6 months. But they were, phenomenal. And, you all as well. I mean, we never felt any, it's just sort of, do what you can do the best you can do, try to reduce burn. And we sort of saw this sort of in-person market go like this really great pipeline and great results just go like to zero almost overnight. But then it was really incredible to at the same time see our customers like start hosting tons of virtual events. They would use Bevy, the product we're using right now. They would use that to like run all the event registration, and then they would just link people out to Zoom or something else. And so this was like in April, end of April, we started to say, wow, like there's all this cool data that's going away to Zoom through this virtual thing. And obviously, like everyone else, we start hosting more virtual events ourselves and seeing the value of it. And so we sort of made this shift, very quickly, almost over. We had a weekend where my co-founders and I and and one or two others got together and we came up with a strategy. And then on Monday morning, we went out and told the team, we're going to build this new product inside of our existing product. And then
I remember that weekend, that Monday, where we had that update, and you was like, "This is what we're going to do," and I was just like, "What did you and the team just do in like 36 hours?" It was quite extraordinary. And I'm like, all right, like, excited to see it, but it was incredibly bold. Let's just say that.
Well, I went and picked up one person on the team who's in San Francisco, and I was like, I called him, and I was like, Friday afternoon, I was like, I'm coming to get you. It was like, I'm putting my family and you and everyone at risk, but we're doing, like, you're going to stay at my house for 2 days. Don't get in an Uber. I'll just come get you. Stay quarantined. It's this sort of different era of the pandemic, right? Where you didn't really, still don't know, like, who's got it, how you get it. Like, and he just, came, and then my co-founders were on video with us, and we just, spent the whole weekend working together on it. And it was terrifying, but also sort of felt like, hey, we're doing something, like not just sitting here helpless waiting for the next bad news to drop. We're actually going to go try and solve real problems for our customers.
Yeah. And maybe transitioning a little bit, because a few months later, some incredibly bad news just dropped that you really reacted in a different manner to, and we're seeing regards to obviously this trial right now, but the killing of George Floyd, and you saw just a bunch of other examples of the Black community really just being put in a very public manner, their lives not being valued as the way they should. That became almost just like an awakening to a large percentage of this country. Talk about like how you reacted in that moment and what you decided to do, leveraging Bevy amidst obviously having to do this pivot where your company, again, like you just mentioned, business model almost vanished overnight. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of experiencing this again this week, and obviously with the Derek Chauvin trial that's going on, I was watching a bunch of the videos last night that I hadn't seen of different people testifying that were there and were part of it. I mean, certainly my experience is, and I would just say this in general, like my experience is much easier than most people's, just in general in my life experience, much easier, much more privileged, but also, we were able to pivot into something that would work. I know a lot of people weren't able to do that. But I think we just saw what was happening. Look, I've had lots of conversations with you over the years about how do we really include the Black community in our company and in tech. I've had lots of conversations with other friends and other people in the Valley about it, people I respect, people all really through Startup Grind. And with George Floyd being murdered on May 25th, it was like, enough's enough. I'm sick of talking about it. My co-founders, felt the exact same way. I was driving across the country, driving my family in an RV, as we were like trying to stay quarantined and visit family. And I was just on this long drive, and my co-founder called me. He was like, we have to do something. I was like, I could not agree more. Like, we have to do something. And we just sort of started to try to figure out a plan. And the first thing was inside of Bevy. Well, the first thing was inside my own family with my kids. And so we started having conversations about race, which will continue the rest of our lives. And if nothing more, can be a positive outcome of the horrific thing that happened to George Floyd, has happened to, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of others in a similar situation as him. But then the thing with our company is what could we do to really change our company? And we just said, we've got to include the Black community in what we're building. And then in conversations with you, you were like, well, Derek, if you do this, you're not just doing something that's good, you're going to create a much more valuable company, because you now have this 14%, 13% of the US population you haven't even been talking to, you're going to include in your hiring process. and the collective talent in the company is going to rise, and you're going to have these more diverse and better perspectives, which are going to make your decisions stronger. And so we just said, okay, we're doing it, and we set a goal we didn't know what goal to set, but we want to have a KPI. And again, in talking to you and talking to others, we came up with this idea of let's have 20% of our company be Black. And if 13% of the US population is Black, 14%, then like that's the least we can do, is like to speed up the injustice that's happened and reduce it. Like we got to do above and beyond the minimum. 13-14% is the minimum. So we need to be better than that. And so we didn't really know how to do that, but we just started recruiting and getting to work and going to Valence. And we'd love for you to tell everybody what Valence is, because it's an incredible resource for and community for startups to become part of. That's kind of where we started in the summer, and then just sort of slowly making progress to today. I just got the updated numbers. We're right at 15% of the company today is Black. We've publicly come out and said that we're going to get to 20% by the summer. And this is sort of like the bottom of the first inning. We think there's so many more things we can do, but that's kind of how it started and where we've been sort of tracking on it. What's been your perspective as a VC, as a Black man, as a founder? Like what has been your reaction and what you've seen over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredibly intense. So, I mean, a lot of what I'd say, much of this world, and also in the US, I think had their eyes kind of opened up to many in the Black community, or most of the Black community. It wasn't really new news. Like we're aware of these stories, this, the treatment that we have, that's, credibly sort of just biased in terms of just how our community is being treated, the centuries of just institutionalized sort of racism, structural racism that is just present in this country. And when you saw it like really in your face, and it was like a potent week of just example after example after example, then George Floyd, you just became, it was just an overwhelming feeling of like sadness, just partially numb, partially exhaustion. But then on top of that, then you get like this at least hopeful like experience where then you see everyone kind of realize, okay, like it is really messed up. We want to do something. But then part of that community is also like, we don't know what to do. We don't even know like what you've been going through. So my phone was like ringing off the hook in terms of just like, hey, could you like educate us on like what we could be doing, what your experience has been? I had public companies like asking me to hop on like late night Zoom calls or read through their statements that they're going to issue the next day. I have no like financial sort of like connection to this company at all, but I'm just doing it as a friend to help out people that are just like trying to figure out what to do. And to do that in the moment where like, yeah, you're going through your own sort of personal struggle and stress. Yeah, it was really, really exhausting. But what I decided to do is just really putting a lot of my efforts and energy into this platform I've been working on, for a couple of years up at that point, called Valence, which was really out of response and seeing within corporate America this dynamic of people were saying that they couldn't find exceptional Black talent, that there's no pipeline, and also they can't find exceptional Black founders because for some reason they just don't exist. And many people would just come to me and say, okay, the very few that are out there you may know, so introduce me to your friends, Kobie. And I realized that if people are trying to solve the problem by talking to their maybe one random Black friend, if they even have that we're not going to really solve the problem around how do we just really connect the exceptional Black talent that's out there with the opportunities that exist within, whether it be sort of, senior leadership positions, board roles, and also just the general, workforce in, companies that also, I think, with regards to the innovation economy, being tech, are really, really huge drivers of wealth in America. So as I was thinking about this, problem, I didn't want to just be that one other voice that said like, BS, you're not trying hard enough. I was like, let me actually try to go to work and solve the problem and use technology as a vehicle to do that. So for me, it came down to the network. If I just created a highly visualized network of all the talent that then people could go to access, to hire or fund, like that would be a way in which you solve the problem. And then I realized that if I created that network, it'd be even more valuable for the community itself, who we're naturally siloed. We're in these siloed ERGs, alumni associations, disparate groups. So I was like, I want to create this one place in which we can all grow as a community and build with one another. And I got all this overwhelming feedback that it should be a business. I mean, I'm a full-time VC. I don't like to start companies. I have also like a full family, 2 boys, drive me crazy, and don't really have all the time in the world. But it became this mission, this calling, and almost like this burden that I had to make sure I saw through, where we had Upfront decide to incubate it, put $1 million of formation capital into it, recruited a team to help me build the day-to-day while I was guiding it and putting together all the pieces that I kind of had the unfair advantage of being able to mobilize based off of my almost close to 2 decades in technology and software to do. And we launched an alpha like a year later and got initial of 3,000 people on the platform, and just saw that there was this excitement around what we're building. And then kind of fast forward 6 months later, I was able to recruit an amazing CEO to run it full time, because I had no intentions of leaving my job as a VC, because I think it's really important for me to be in the role of a VC to actually try to drive scalable change and be able to control capital and move capital in the right way to actually influence what we need to have influence in this country. Yeah, and then George Floyd and Black Lives Matters hit, and it was like, wow, this is our time where we can really go hard and go fast. And in that moment, we raised a Series A, literally in a week. So Hans Tung and GGV led our Series A round. It was the fastest funding process I've probably ever been a part of. It was the own company I founded, so that was a really unique position to be in. But honestly, it was an easy decision to make to go with Hans, because we were on a board together and spent a couple of years together. So I already knew how he ticked and how he thought, and it was really a relationship that was already established to go on this real huge mission that we're trying to really achieve here. And frankly, I saw that there was a moment now where companies really wanted to roll up their sleeves and do the work and actually solve the problem. We at Valence could be a vehicle for that, and that's what we're trying to do. And also, it could be a very large business in and of itself, but also could really help drive change on a massive scale to everyone that identifies with this problem. So that's what I did. I just went to work and put my head down and just put a lot of my efforts into Valence. Oh, and on top of my day job funding startups.
Yeah, and I have to say, having watched that whole thing, I thought for sure you were going to go run Valence. I was like, for sure he's not going to be a VC very much longer. I need to figure out, somebody else at Upfront I'm going to have to be working with that stinks. I was excited for you, but then actually you were like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to get started. I'm going to get other people in place to drive this ahead. And that's exactly what you did, which is incredible. But I think, from a founder perspective, most venture capitalists are people that, are great at, picking companies, and they're sort of focused on that. But I think at the same time, for founders, we really appreciate people, there's kind of there's a little bit of an operator myth of that operators are potentially the best venture capitalists. But I would also say that founders definitely do appreciate people who have built businesses, because an investor, they're investors having built businesses. So the fact that you have sort of started this and built Valence, to me as an entrepreneur, makes me much more excited to work with you, because you get it more so than most people. Or Ryan Smith, who started Qualtrics, who's on our board, he has very specific insights into very specific problems that I have that he had 5 or 6 or 10 years ago. Yeah. And so that makes him vastly more valuable and helpful to me than somebody who, has just been, writing checks. And so I think you doing Valence, which we are now a paying customer of Valence, all of our sort of the top talent inside of Bevy is going to receive training via Valence moving forward. All the top Black talent in our companies, our leaders in the company are getting support and training through Valence to help them level up their skills and get executive coaching and that sort of thing. We're also using it as a way to find incredibly talented people from the Black community. So that's been another huge boost for us. I've specifically gone on for specific jobs and reached out to people and done interviews with people I have recruited from there or met from Valence. So it's a really incredible platform, and hopefully if somebody, if you haven't experienced it, go to valence.community and check it out, and see how you can get involved, for sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the kind words. And honestly, part of what makes it easy to not have to leave my day job as a venture capitalist and be CEO of Valence. One, Guy is so much better CEO than I ever could be, who's the CEO of Valence. But two, Valence is value add to bring to all my portfolio. It's not it's this thing that doesn't mesh with everything else I do. And we could talk about how we leverage Valence as part of this latest funding round, but it is a way in which I can bring incredible value to all my portfolio companies, the Upfront portfolio companies, as well as the broader tech and just business ecosystem. So for me, it was just this amazing company that in and of itself would stand alone, but would allow me to just deliver on so much incredible value that's within the Black community to the rest of the tech ecosystem. So that's why it was a really easy decision not to have to leave my day job, because I am still doing the work with Valence. It's not it's integrated in a way that very few other companies I feel would be integrated in terms of the work. But maybe let's transition to, now we went past the 15 million. Now you got 40 million. So that process, you figured out, oh, this virtual event thing works. That engineer you grabbed during COVID, that was a good idea. He probably doesn't hate you so much around putting his life at risk. That paid off, and now you kind of have this explosive, high growth just machine here, and one that's going to attract a lot more capital and a lot more just growth. Talk about the Series C fundraising process.
Just totally easy. Just another day of work. Just all come together perfectly the way it goes in your mind. Just happens so naturally and simply, or the exact opposite of that, actually, maybe. So, look, the first half of last year, we had really bad results, frankly, from a business standpoint. But once we launched our virtual product in the second half of last year, results were very, very good. And we showed incredible growth in a short amount of time. And there was a lot of interest around the category and virtual events in general for obvious reasons. And I think as we started to talk to different people and have an opportunity to raise funding, we looked at what could we do that would be really interesting. What does the future of investing look like? We want to build a company of the future with, our goal is to build the most racially diverse company in tech. I don't exactly know what that means, but that's sort of where we're generally trying to figure out what that means. How do we build an equally diverse investor team and get the best investors that we possibly can? And so with the round, when we sort of started to figure out, hey, we've got sort of anchors to start to do some of the funding. And then we looked at how can we really bring on amazing people to be part of that. And you obviously playing a huge role in helping me drive that and figure that out and get, speaking with the right people. And so we put together this sort of syndicate of investors of about 40 investors. Some of the larger ones were our existing people like Upfront and Accel and Ryan Smith. And then really bringing in all sorts of incredible people to complement that, specifically leaders in the Black community, in the Black tech community, the business community. And so, about 70% of the investors overall were Black investors. About 20% of the funding of the round was led by those Black investors. The sort of unique thing about that, there's a bunch of unique things, but I think the main thing is when a round is oversubscribed and when the insiders are saying, we just want to keep getting as much as we can possibly get. Usually they just take it for themselves. And we were really fortunate to have a lot of collaboration there with the inside investors to say, no, like, we're doing something special and different here. The team wants to do something special and different. Let's figure out how to make this work together. Let's include other people, even at the economic expense of those firms, with the idea like, this is for the greater good long term. Let's just do it. And so we were able to sort of get the investor team on board with that and go execute that together. What feels like, I think the funding round that we did is the kind of round that's just going to be very normal in the future. I don't know when in the future. I'm hoping 6 months. Maybe it's a year. Maybe it's 2 years. Maybe it's 3 months. I don't know. But one of the best things you can do to help minority communities is to help create wealth. And the greatest place to create wealth is in equity and ownership of technology companies that have the chance to go from 10 to 100x of what that investment is. And so, this felt like right in mission with what we're trying to do, and also felt kind of unique and cool and something that we could kind of be a leader on.
Yeah, and it's interesting, as we went out doing it, we never, I don't think, had the intentions when we architected the strategy and went it out to put together the syndicate to talk about it so loudly in this manner. But one of the key investors we brought on board, who's now a good friend, Jim Lowry, he was the first black consultant hired by McKinsey in 1968, and has been a trailblazer for D&I and has influenced so many amazing careers, like Melody Hobson to Ken Chenault. And he reflected on the moment that we were creating and bringing together this unique syndicate. He himself, and he's 83 years old, he's been around the block. He had no idea before how to get on the cap table of technology companies and to invest in a business like Bevy. And as we got more individuals that are very significant sort of stature, and you would have thought knew how this works as well, they were saying the same thing. And Jim's reaction is like, this should be a model. We should talk about it, and we should try to have others follow suit and tell the story so that it can be done again and again and again. Which, when you hear something like that from someone like Jim, you're like, wow, okay, like this is pretty significant. Which also is somewhat saddening, because you hope that this is not that exceptional of an event and this is the way deals are just done. But I think you and I and many are hopeful that we start seeing this as the norm pretty soon here, so we can really start bridging the gap between the Black community and the innovation economy. Because many people, if they don't know, there is a pretty dramatic wealth gap that exists in this country. And that's only going to explode even more with the innovation economy and how much wealth is being created at a staggering pace. You just see like Coinbase going to go public at $100 billion. Just imagine if key members of the Black community were on that cap table. Actually, Nas and Anthony Saleh from Queensbridge, they actually did get early on there. So I think he's going to, the news is going to make $100 million. But like, imagine if you had more and more people from the Black community as a part of these cap tables. This is a way in which you can actually generate lots of wealth in a meaningful period of time, but it has to be done systematically. It can't just be one random events where you have something like Anthony and Nas able to get a cap table. It needs to be systematically connected into some of these communities so that we can be a part of the wealth creation that's happening in this country because of tech. So I think the situation that we're doing here at Bevy is exciting, and we all have aspirations for Bevy being a several billion-dollar company. But we need to have this happen again and again and again and again, so we maximize those chances of the wealth being created within these communities. And it's a very serious topic that we, as a country, need to be spending more time talking about. So I know we're almost at the top of the hour here.
Yeah,
so
maybe we
can
jump to the Q&A a little bit. We do that?
Let's do it.
So I'll start. Grace, we'll hand it over to you.
Hi. Okay, great. Cool. So let's start with Giacomo asked, how important is it to personally know the investors before pitching the startup idea?
So personally know that, I mean, you should know, it's hard to personally know them, but to know their backgrounds and what interests them, where their stage of focus is from a check size perspective, from a sector's perspective. If you don't do your homework, you're just gonna, I don't say you're gonna embarrass yourself, but you could embarrass yourself. So for me, I clearly know if someone do their homework, if they're pitching me a company that's like dead smack in the middle of a sector I know, whether it be like marketing technology, VR, or like fashion retail. And if they're trying to explain the basics to me, it's just like, God, you have me for half an hour and you're trying to tell me how large e-commerce the category is. It's like, you probably didn't do your homework. So it is of paramount importance that you do your research.
Derek, any note on that? Or
Great.
Great, perfect. Okay, we have Nathan, who has a cannabis events company and is wondering what you guys think about pivoting back to live events and, you know, the golden question of the year, when can we get back in person? Derek, what do you think about that?
I think about this a lot. Look, we have a 10,000 person event that we barely got to host in February 2020. And then we didn't get to host this year, and we're wondering what's going to happen next year. I think the hyper local in-person events where people in communities that they live, where they've been vaccinated with the same vaccine, where they're not getting on planes. Look, I think obviously people want to get back out and to be around other human beings, and so I think those kinds of events, hyper local events, things that you can drive to, probably will come back relatively quickly. I mean, look, the vaccines are supposed to be good for about 6 months. So everybody that got vaccinated in the last 3 or 4 months, they're going to have to get revaccinated 6 months later. I think we'll figure out how to do that on some sort of regular basis that becomes much less painful than it is today. But you know, are people going to be flying all over the world to attend conferences? I don't know. I don't know when that comes back. So I wouldn't bank on it. If you're trying to build a business, you can only control so much. So, you know, it sounds like you've pivoted to try to find something that you can do, and maybe you can do that more. Maybe it's not worked great, and you can go local in person. I'm not sure, but you know, I just focus on what you can control, and so. You know, and don't lose too much sleep over the things you can't control. Just, you know, try to make, you know, something that people need in the sphere of what's possible.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we've got a question from Carl, who I think this might be a common feeling. Maybe it's a misconception that all the interest from investors is focused on tech startups. Any suggestions how to find investors that are focused on other types of industries that aren't necessarily tech related? Kobie, do you have any advice on that?
I mean, I'd say it all depends on the type of investor you're looking for. Again, like venture capital is looking for like venture returns, which venture returns are depending on the return thresholds someone's seeing. They could be at the seed stage. They're looking for many times like $1 billion multiple. They're looking to swing for the fences. And you just have to realize that tech has had the ability to do that at a disproportional sort of rate relative to other categories. Doesn't mean that you can't see the same returns going after investing in, you know, CPG or other industries, but that's where a lot of investors have focused their time within the venture industry on tech. And depending on, again, I don't know what industry this person's in, there are investors that are generally deploying capital in multiple different sort of sectors. And it's just finding your way to network amongst those folks that maybe have raised capital in industry before, and just to know the way in which they work, know them, who the main players are, and then start just getting yourself in the ecosystem and start pulling on the threads to find who the main players are and just start having conversations. So I'm trying to think of an industry where there wouldn't be an investor there who would want to deploy capital behind. And if there's not, that means that the idea is not one worthy to be invested in. So there has to be someone there that focuses on the industry. I'm curious, Derek, if you have perspective on that answer.
Well, every time I've ever raised funding, it's been customer driven, revenue driven. So I'm not, like social businesses where you kind of try to get tons of users and, build this platform. I've tried to do that. I've never been able to raise funding on that stuff. But so if you're in some sort of manufacturing business, I mean, can you get letters of intent? Can you get pre-orders? Can you get, signed contracts? And I think, like, to what Kobie just said, like, if you have proven there's some market demand and there's some interest, you're gonna find investors for it. If it nobody can see what you see exactly. That's why you're building it, not them, or we would have all built Stripe, or we would have all built Airbnb, right? So you're the founder, you're driving what the future is going to look like and driving to a product towards where you think the future is going to be. But what kind of traction and revenue can you get that can eliminate risk for an investor to have to, like, imagine what the future looks like? Kobie, when we invested in us, he saw that we had a $100,000 deal with Atlassian. He saw that we had a $200,000 deal with Salesforce. Like, it doesn't take that big of an imagination when you see those things to say, like, oh, well, if they can do that, they can probably do it with 100 or 200 or 1,000 other companies if they do a great job executing. And so, trying to do some of that work up front might make it a lot easier for an investor to take a risk on you. And an entrepreneur will say, well, then what's the risk for investors? It's like, well, that's the trade-off. You're going to have to get a little bit of traction before you can get them to take risk.
Yeah, and I guess to put it, like, succinctly, an investor is trusting you with their money. So first and foremost, they have to trust that if they give you $1, you're actually going to spend it wisely, and that they feel like you're going to plant a seed and reap a harvest. If they don't feel that, regardless of what industry you're in, then they're not going to give you the $1. They can put it somewhere else. And that's just fun. That's what you have to be able to achieve when you're pitching any investor, is that they'll trust you and that seed's going to turn into harvest. That's it.
Awesome. Okay, here's our last question for both of you. Similar question, but on both sides of the spectrum here. What are the top 3 things that you guys look for in an investor or a founder when you're doing your research, when you're in that meeting? What are the 3 things that you're checking off your list before you sign the deal or before you go into business with them? Kobie, you go first.
They have to be a good person and have a strong moral compass.
Okay.
They need to be mission driven, and they need to be into operating in a category that almost has unlimited bounds, so it could sustain like a several $billion-dollar company. Those are the biggest things I look for.
Yeah, I would just jotting these down as I'm thinking about this. That person's morally aligned is really critical, and this is where, like, you have investors who end up putting the founders ahead of themselves at times, and hopefully the founders put their investors ahead of themselves at times as well. Like, it's a two-way street, but you need people that are willing to do that. I want investors that are willing to work. Seems obvious, but I also like people that like are gonna be I like people that are pushing themselves. I don't care where they are in the spectrum, but like people that are like, in 5 years from now, like, I'm gonna have pushed myself to be better and to be better at my craft, and like, to be here. I'm here today. I want to be here. So wherever maybe you've already gotten way up here and you're going to keep pushing, or maybe you're way down here and you're going to get to here. Like, I want people that have a growth mindset and want to get better every day. And I think that's something that a lot of investors, it sort of has this stigma of like it's kind of an easy job and you don't have to work that hard, which it's not. It's a very hard job, but to be great at it. But you can definitely not push yourself and still be successful. And I think those are not the kind of people that I'm looking to work with.
How do you guys, you're both agreeing on this, which is great. Clearly why you guys went into business together, but the moral compass thing, this might be a simple sounding question, but like, how do you figure that out? Like you sit down at a table and you're like, here are my top values. I'm a family man. I like honesty. Like, how do you share those things with someone in a genuine way?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, but it's just spending time with them and getting to know them as a human being. And as you hear people's stories and you hear the way they think about situations, the way they even like treat their potential co-founders or employees, you start noticing patterns, and you notice patterns of people where it's like, oh yeah, they did something questionable, like one small little questionable thing that you discover in like a courting process, to me, like signals like if there's smoke, there's like a raging fire. And I'll be honest, with COVID and doing this job over Zoom, it's given me a lot of pause around who I actually partner with, because you don't get some of those signals, those smoke signals where like, oh man, this person is just like a nut job. So it just takes time. And that's why I generally don't pursue processes where someone's going out to raise and they're doing it within a week and they got like 7 term sheets. And I'm just like, okay, cool. Like go off and like get the terms from someone else. So that's at least how I try to do it. But it's incredibly difficult, and sometimes you'll get it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, look, most of my entrepreneurial career, I've not been able to raise funding. I've not been able to get people interested, and it's, and too, like even co-founders. I mean, I like went years and years trying to find co-founders to work on stuff with me and been unsuccessful with that. So at some stage of your entrepreneurial journey, you honestly, if somebody like has a working functional brain, like you will just take them at any level of the business, whether it's an employee, co-founder, investor, anything, like just somebody that will help, like you'll take it. But that's not the best situation. And so you want to obviously try to get to a place where you can pick and choose and try to get great people. I mean, look, Ryan Sweeney, who's our investor at Accel, like he and I talk about Little League baseball more than we talk about Bevy. Kobie, Kobie has the nicest shoe collection of anybody that I know outside of my brother.
Prove it.
I'll just say, like, I've been like wearing Jordan since I was 8 years old, and my sweet grandmother would buy me, like, when I see somebody wearing Jordans, like, or really nice shoes, like Nike shoes, like it means something to me. And I don't see a lot of investors wearing shoes like that. So like that said something to me, like, okay, like I can connect with Kobie on a personal level that like I can't connect with most people, because we see eye to eye on that thing that's very important to me. Anyways, and I think what Kobie said was exactly right. Like, spend time with people. And when you're talking to investors, like, I was laughing when he was saying that, because I know I've said things at times that were those red flags to people. And so you gotta, as an entrepreneur, you gotta be careful to like be authentic and tell them, like, be real, but also like, you don't want to ruin it. So it's kind of, like you can say things that can just throw the whole thing off. And I've had those experiences where investor just stops talking to me and I don't know why. And it's because I said something that like caused a red flag. And so you got to like balance those two things of being, I generally like, honesty is the best policy. Be authentic, be true. And like, if they don't like you, like, and it's not meant to be, but there's definitely times where like you can be too honest and you can say too much, just like probably in a relationship, you can be too honest, and you should like, hold on some of those things and like be more conservative of how you speak about certain topics or things. And just as before somebody really truly knows you. So yeah.
That's great. That's great advice. And I think it's definitely that balance between being vulnerable and open in business, but also being able to protect yourself and not, let everything out to the point where you might get, burned on a business side because, you've told someone all your secrets. So I think, but it is nice. I think it's refreshing to hear that, like, being a good person is one of the most important parts about raising money. It's not like, you have the best technology, which is also a great thing to have, but you get your foot in the door by being a genuine human. So I like that. That makes me feel good about everything. Well, we've gone over time, but due to a great conversation. So I really appreciate both of you guys joining us today. And I know our community appreciates hearing about all your experiences, and hope to see everyone soon. Come back and join us. We host these events all the time. Thanks, Derek and Kobie.
Thank you, Grace. Thanks, Kobie. See everyone. Have a great afternoon.